everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Inclusion Festival today. I'm now delighted to welcome our next speaker, Dima Gawi, who is joining us from the US to talk about age diversity and DEI at large within the workplace. However, Dima herself has a fascinating career and a cultural history, which we can also talk about as well, having been born in Ankara, Turkey, raised in Amman, Jordan, and then having emigrated across to San Diego in California back in 1996, which has given her a fantastic insight into two very different, contrasting cultures. So welcome, Dima. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about the context of having moved in your life from the Middle East across to America. What are your biggest learnings from having traversed from one culture to another?
Oh my goodness, it's a lot of culture shock. I guess the biggest learning was to drive on the big California freeways. It is so other than the language and getting more comfortable with the driving, it is to get to understand people and watch people and understand what do they value. And at the end of the day, I realized even though what people valued across different cultures may initially appear different, but at the end of the day, it's the same. We all want to be respected. We all want to live in peace. We want to be healthy. We want our family to do well. We want to work for organizations that appreciate us. We want to continue to advance. So, we may say it in a different language, but at the end of the day, it's the same. And in addition to being Middle Eastern and American, I got to live across like so many different countries and travel the world. And that's what I learned at the end. We're very, very similar. And that's why when we talk about DEI and people talk about diversity and bringing people that are different, which I value, and this is so important to me. But at the end of the day, again, we're all the same. We're all bringing value, but at the same time, we all value very similar things in terms of what we want in life.
Absolutely. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion means the same, really, doesn't it? Universally across the whole planet. So
Yeah.
it's just that the methods of getting to that point, particularly in the workplace, is different from one place to another. So tell us a little bit about your own career, because I know you describe yourself as a DEI success story, which I rather like, particularly within the context of this event, where many of us are striving to get to a position where we can have very many more people in our organization saying that they are DEI success stories, that they've been enabled. How has it all worked out for you so far?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because anytime a person challenges DEI and they say, "Oh, it doesn't work," look at me. I'm the result of diversity initiatives. When I first moved to the US, I was extremely shy. I come from a very conservative Christian background in the Middle East. And I was taught to continue to obey and to follow and not to have an identity, not to have a voice, not to have dreams, not to have any of this, and just follow what the culture and religion expected of us. Until I came to the US and I started watching people around me and I realized, wow, like I want to be just like them. I wish I can be like them. And it was very difficult initially for me to get into the workplace because of course like my English wasn't great, my confidence wasn't great, until one day I applied for a job at Bank of America. It was a teller job at obviously at a bank, and it was minimum wage and 10 hours a week. That's it. And I was interviewing. I still remember the hiring manager. His name is Matt. I was interviewing with Matt, and in my head, I kept telling myself, here we go, he's not going to select me. Here we go, he's not going to select me. But then at the end of the interview, he said something that stayed with me. And he said, everybody starts someplace. Everybody deserves a chance. And then he said, I'm going to give you that chance. So he gave me the job. And when I think about where I am right now, influencing people around the world and doing all these empowering talks and workshops, but it started with Matt. It started with somebody who invested his time to make sure that I succeed, and he gave me a chance while everybody else didn't. Isn't that what DEI is all about? Is seeing the potential in people that are underrepresented, but also these individuals that may not even realize their own potential and realize their own value. And I believe when we're talking about leadership, and there's so many definitions for leadership, at the end of the day, when I think of what is leadership, I think it's Matt. It is that one person. To me, he is the definition of leadership. And this is what the world needs more of. And as a result, I'm here.
That is a fantastic story. I'm sure everybody can take such a lot of, positive feeling from that, because I'm sure we've all been in situations, or a lot of us have in our lives, where we have been in that very vulnerable feeling position when you're applying for a new role and you feel like an outsider, and could you possibly be trusted? And it's quite interesting, actually. I mean, it depends obviously which demographic you're from and what you're aspiring for, but it does always take somebody to take a chance sometimes to enable you to move forward in your career. And the amount of confidence that can come from that, from both sides, hopefully,
Yeah.
is a very inspiring thing. So how has your career gone since Matt opened the door, so to speak?
Oh, it was amazing. So I worked so hard for Bank of America, by the way. I
Yeah.
I I became number one in selling credit cards. I was so good in helping my clients acquire debt. And and after a few years, I graduated from college because that job helped me to pay for college. I was also at that time in an abusive relationship, an abusive marriage. That I got married very early in life through traditional marriage, and after getting some confidence and getting my degree, because I was able to pay for my education, I got a job with Merrill Lynch and started making a little more money. That gave me the power to be able to escape. So I escaped from that marriage and I started my career. I worked at Merrill Lynch for a few years and then worked on my master's. I got my degree and then I got my job with IBM, which opened the world for me. That's when I got to live in Japan and in South Africa and travel the world and grew as a person and grew as a leader, where I never saw myself as a leader. I always saw myself as a follower. But again, these DEI programs, and I know specifically within IBM, they focus so much on DEI. These programs open doors, and not because, some people say, oh, now we're going to hire and promote people that are not qualified because, they're from underrepresented groups. Not because I'm not qualified. It's just I needed the nurturing. And when I got that, I continued to grow. And the best part, I helped other people to grow from different backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities and religion and sexual orientation. When we grow, when we enable a person to discover their potential and help them shatter these limitations, whether it is limitations that are cultural or corporate limitations, it creates a powerful ripple effect. And as a result, we're giving permission to the rest of the team and the rest of the organization and the rest of the community to do the same.
That's very inspiring indeed, absolutely. And how interesting that your career then unfolded into something which was altogether more global than perhaps you might ever have been able to anticipate, which in turn gave you an even more broad understanding of and tolerance, presumably, for difference and different cultures out there in the world, and how we can all at heart work together for the greater good, despite having lots of different influences and traditions there. that are also coming into it. I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on age diversity, because I know that that's something that you have spoken quite a lot about in the past as well. That's something which, no matter which country we're all in, we can all relate to, having different ages across the workforce.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you've found so far.
One of the things I found is there's so much demand for this topic right now. It's amazing. It just feels that after the shutdown from COVID and a lot of organizations went back to work, they realized for some reason, for the first time, oh my goodness, we now have a whole new generation, Generation Z. What are we going to do with them? I think a lot of organizations got shocked with millennials and they thought they were going to get millennials forever. And they didn't realize that now we have a brand new generation that is entering the workplace. So some things just to, as I'm starting this conversation, it's interesting for me how every generation looks at the one after them and they criticize them. And this started from the longest time. It started like for thousands of years. Every generation looks at the one after and they're like, oh, they're lazy, they're entitled, all of these things. And I recommend for the listeners and for the viewers to watch themselves, because whenever we're doing this, we're putting other generations down and we're putting our generation down instead of slowing down and understanding how are they different and how can we get the most out of them. And that's where I realize a lot of people don't do that. And this is obviously DEI in general. It is emotional intelligence, understanding other people and understanding how do we get the most out of them instead of saying, oh, they're lazy, they're entitled, they're blah, blah, blah. That's one thing. The other thing is it's so important not to categorize people. Not all boomers are a certain way. Not all Gen X are a certain way. Not all Gen Z or Alpha are the same way. They're impacted by similar factors, like political factors. So the political situation I grew up with as a Middle Eastern woman is very different than a political situation you grew up with, or somebody in the US or somebody in South Africa went through. So, political, economical, social, technological, they influence us as a generation, but we cannot, it's so important not to put people in buckets and to judge them like all baby boomers are bad in technology. That is not true. Or millennials are amazing in technology. I know some millennials that are not. So that's why it's important for us to get to know people at a personal level and to appreciate where they are, and again to get the most out of them. So these are some like very basic things. Don't judge the next generation and don't put people in buckets.
I think that's so important, isn't it? And I know, obviously, preaching to the converted, we really do all appreciate that there are these stereotypes which many of us are having to sort of tackle, and you need to undo the stereotypes and see people as individuals to understand everybody in their and their true selves, all the intersectionalities as well that are coming into it. No two people are the same, and it's very dangerous to group people by any metric, whether it's gender, it's race, or whether it happens to be something such as age, something as basic as age. I must say, anecdotally, in my career, I've noticed that myself and my peers, when we were in our 20s, it was really hard to get people to take us seriously, because they would just see that you've relatively recently come out of college, you're wet behind the ears, you don't know anything about anything. And actually, looking at the skill sets that my peers and I had at that time, it could be said that we are just the same. We came out fully formed, we're still fully formed. And yeah, okay, you get more experience as you go on, but it's belittling the strength of intelligence there among 20-somethings is a really short-sighted thing to do, isn't it? And
Yeah, well,
as you say,
especially
they
in
might
the
even be
world.
able to teach you a few things.
Yeah, especially in the world we're living in right now, like with all AI and all the robotics. It's amazing for me when I look at my nephews. I have a nephew who's 13 and another one that is 4 or 5. most like, yeah, let's say 5. And they already know how to code. They already,
Wow.
especially also the young one, the 5-year-old, he just last weekend, he did a whole Lego with robotics. So they're coming into this world and their brain is ready for the shift that we're going through. I have no idea how to do that. So it's how can we learn from them and how can we empower them, because the world needs their minds. The world needs their passion, not just for technology, their passion for inclusion, their passion for creating a better world. Like, look at the world we're giving them, and not to be so negative, like political situation, economic situation, pollution. They're inheriting all of this. So instead of putting them down, how can we empower them instead and provide them with the ability to think creatively and come with different ideas than what we have? And yes, the way they work is different, and it's a matter of understanding it and adapting. So, like, one of the topics that keeps coming up related to this important topic about working across generations is, oh, they want to work from home. Okay, work from home. If they are creative, like I'm working from home right now. So if they are if we're getting the most out of them, why do we need to watch them sitting at their desk from 9 to 5? Right? Unless if they are a surgeon or a police officer or some job that they need to be on site,
Work across the
then
board,
it's
doesn't
different.
it? In that way. But yeah, absolutely. There should always be room for exception. Absolutely. Thinking conversely about the other side of that, I imagine that quite a lot of the typecasting that we traditionally see between the age groups is possibly also a reflection of the older age groups beginning to feel perhaps slightly locked out if the world moves very swiftly, as we have seen in the past few decades with technology. It's very easy for those older groups to feel more alienated if they suddenly look around and discover that even the 5-year-olds know how to code. Are they going to be out of a job? Are they going to find that they're too overqualified, the older segments from, and that will perhaps be a threatening thing for them? How can we prevent that feeling, particularly as the world accelerates in terms of its development with AI coming in? What do you think needs to happen to make sure that everyone is included?
I am so glad you brought this one up, because whenever we're talking about topics of generations, it's easy for us to just go and talk about millennials and Gen Z. And it's easy for us to forget or not to give as much attention to the more senior generations. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to give a little more specifics before I go there. It is in the US. We have right now 10,000 baby boomers reaching retirement age every single day. And I wrote down the ages. So baby boomers is anyone between 56 and 74. So 10,000 baby boomers are reaching retirement age. And do you know that over 50% of the baby boomers in the US say that they will never be able to retire? Financially, they cannot retire. What does it mean? That means that we're going to have organizations that we have baby boomers that we need to keep engaging them. We need to keep motivating them. We need to keep getting all of this amazing wisdom and knowledge that they have acquired throughout the years. How many companies do you know that are doing that? I don't know any, but also we need to look at the other half. So 50%, over 50% cannot retire. What about the rest that are retired, like in the process of retiring? Do we have a succession plan? A lot of organizations don't. Do we have like a knowledge transfer? Again, a lot of organizations don't. So that's why I'm happy you brought this one up, because we need to understand how to engage the younger generations, but also we need to appreciate the more senior generations and to continue to utilize their wisdom. I know a company just 2 weeks ago that they had a major layoff, And the majority of people they laid off were individuals that are close to retirement. And we see that happening a lot. So yeah, so maybe in the company's perspective, these individuals may be making more money, but what are we doing? Like overall, we're hurting everybody. We're hurting the culture. We're missing out on the knowledge and all of these things. So when we talk about what do we do to engage them, and especially in situations where they may be the only baby boomer on a team. I know individuals that their manager is a millennial, their entire team is millennial. They don't understand the music these millennials are listening to or what they're talking about. And it is like everything. It is to help people feel that they're being seen and they're being heard instead of being disregarded. And also to be intentional, to say, like in everything, like when we want to be inclusive, we want to be intentional in making sure that this person is part of the conversation, that they're sharing their thoughts without being disregarded. And to continue to work with them on developing the skills. They may not be that expert in a specific, and I don't want to generalize, but they may not be a certain expert, but what can we do to help them build new skills in order to continue to motivate them? And what I'm realizing too, and I have multiple friends that are in their 70s, and now with the stock market and everything, they need to go back to work. So it's interesting for me because I know a lot of organizations that are struggling to hire. It's amazing. I know so many recruiters that are getting out of the business because they're like, we cannot find people. We just don't want to be in this business anymore. So what can we do in order to create programs related to getting back to work? Rehiring these individuals. Maybe it is part-time, maybe it is hourly, and to engage them, to fill the gaps of the areas that we are unable to recruit otherwise. So it requires creativity. And to me, this stuff is fun. It is great to bring people with different perspectives. We just need to watch our biases. We need to watch our assumptions about other people, what they can, what they cannot do, who can be successful, who is not successful, who can be friends with us and not. Instead, to get to know the person at an individual level, understand their strengths, and of course, match them with the right job. And that takes leadership. So that's why we need more of Matt. We need to bring Matt into the workplace and multiply him.
Yes, absolutely. And for anybody who's joined after when Dima was talking about Matt, he was the gentleman who helped to give Dima her first big break in her career and took a chance. So
Yeah.
absolutely advocating that. And I'm sure that many people feel that that is certainly something that's very important. Just going back then to all the age diversity among us and how we can get the most out of it. You've mentioned obviously that we need to try to not stereotype, to really help to enable rather than to put people into a corner, to bring in more flexibility. So if people want to work flexibly or remotely or whatever, that they are enabled to work using the right kinds of technology in a setting which suits them best. One other additional thing to cover, of course, is that technology has been moving very fast. There are, people who do struggle with that technological wave. For anyone who is struggling, perhaps in the older demographic, because it's not something that they have necessarily been schooled with, and it's things that they're having to learn whilst on the job. What would your recommendation be in terms of how leaders can make sure that both the people coming in at the start of their careers and those who are very mature in their careers can still coexist within the same organization profitably as we go forward? What are the key things that leaders need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mentioned some of them is to get to know the person at an individual level, understand their strengths, and align their job role with their strengths. Not every job is going to require AI, not every single one, right? So that's why the more we invest time to get to know the people and to it's not a matter of just filling a seat, to be intentional in who's going to do what job, but also it is continuous training and feedback, like continuous giving these individuals across generations feedback, and especially the younger ones, they're asking for these things, and reverse mentoring. So many times whenever we're talking about these generations and all of this, what can we do instead of just telling them what they're supposed to do in terms of mentoring them? How can we have reverse mentoring? Ask them, what is the culture you're looking for? What areas can we improve? What part of your job you enjoy doing, and what part you would like for us to work, like where are you struggling, and let us help you. And I believe whether it is whenever we're increasing diversity generations, the role of the manager is more important than ever, because that's when we need to make sure that the manager is investing the time to get to know people, assign the tasks based on their skills, motivate them, and to continue to work on developing them. The challenge is many managers, at least the ones I know, they have a full job in addition to being manager of people. So they don't have the time to do all of these things. And of course, then we end up with the clash between generations, issues with communication, and all of this. So that is advice to organizations. Make sure your managers, anyone like any supervisor, anyone in leadership, have the time to interact with the team, because right now more than ever, even though a robot can do a job, but the robot is not going to have the human element that we need from our management team. And I know, like, for example, my friend the other day, one of the ones that's looking for a job, and she's in her 70s, she discovered Google Docs for the first time, and it was like this amazing new concept, and she loved it. So not everybody is going to be absolutely excellent in every part of technology. This, by the way, applies across generations. So how can we, again, be intentional in how we are assigning the tasks to our team members?
Absolutely, that's very important indeed. So we're at a very interesting point in time at the moment where we have so many different generations coexisting in the workplace, perhaps more than ever before, going from the builders and then the baby boomers, the Gen X's, Gen Y's or millennials, the Gen Z's, and then moving forward into Generation Alphas as well. What are your thoughts on that? Quite swiftly, the millennials and the Gen Alphas are coming forwards. They'll be in the majority before we know it as well, which is obviously going to change work culture, or change the influences within work culture to quite a degree. What are your thoughts about how we can all coexist?
Yeah, and I'm seeing it already. The more we have millennials in management and senior management role, I'm seeing how their decisions are different. So they're so much more open into flexible workplace, and they don't believe in the work-life balance. They believe in work-life integration. How can we integrate both of them? There's never going to be a balance. I see how they're focusing so much more on inclusion. It's just as if genetically, like they're hungry for these things. And I also, at least from the millennial managers that I know, they're so intentional in addressing career paths, talking to their team about the future and what they're working on developing them. And of course, like, I'm always sensitive not to generalize, but at least these are the millennial managers that I know. And how observing how they do things differently. But when you think about it, regardless what generation we're talking about, we all want to have flexible work environment. We all want a manager that is investing time in us and want us to have a vision of the future. We all want to get feedback from our managers. It's just this generation, millennials and Gen Z, they're just so much more vocal about it, and they're more intentional about it. Like, I want all these things that they're asking for, and I've always wanted these things, but I'm just watching how they're doing things differently and being like what they're focusing on, not just the bottom line. And I like that. It is, how can you be more conscious? How can you be more inclusive as you are working towards the bottom line? So so it's no longer just about the money. It is about something bigger than them. And I'm also watching them how they're so much more intentional in encouraging their team to volunteer in the community, to support, for example, Black History Month, Pride Month, all of these things. Not saying prior generations were not. I'm just saying that these generations are on like a steroid. It is just so much more than ever. And I love that. I believe cultures, as we continue to evolve as humanity, we have these generations coming into the world, but coming also to the workplace and helping us in our evolution as humanity. And I truly believe in the importance of the corporate world, because when we are doing things in the organization and creating this mindset of inclusion, that we're investing in your future, where we care about what you say, we want to hear your voice, we want to learn about different people, that is, and I said it earlier, this has a powerful ripple effect for other for our community, for the place of worship. We get to learn these things. And I believe millennial managers, I haven't seen many Gen Z managers, they're still young, but I see it with millennial managers, and I absolutely love it.
How do you think that's going to impact the work culture going forward then, given that we're not very far from the time when even more than 50% will be millennials, Gen Zs, and Gen Alphas among us?
Yeah. Not to generalize, because not every millennial is going to be an
No, of
amazing
course.
manager, but I'll
Yeah.
just talk about me and the people I know. I think it's amazing. Like, I watch them and I do a lot of surveys with them and focus group discussions to get to learn about their style. And it is very, very positive. I know one company that did not lose one employee for the last, like, let's say 4 or 5 years, while everybody was struggling during COVID and after COVID. They did not. Their entire management team, they're millennials. They're actually not just millennials. There are millennials that quit school, did not graduate from college, and started a business. And then they merged with another company that happened to be other millennials that quit school and started their business. And this is a new aspect of diversity that now we're hearing more about. It is, I think it's called the paper ceiling, where a lot of the younger generations, they're looking into the structure of the system of what were the categories of success in the future. And now we're not seeing that. So category of success in the past, category of success in the past was you have to have a degree. But now when I look at the millennials and Gen Zers, they're like, you don't have to have a degree in order to be successful. And I'm seeing the millennial managers, they're bringing that into the workplace, especially as they are doing well. They're serving their customers great. They are being creative. I'm not saying education is not important. I'm an ex. We believe in the power of education, but now I'm seeing this millennial managers bringing concepts and starting conversations that I never heard of just 5 years ago. So it's bringing new perspective.
Well, it's been fascinating to talk to you, Dima, and I think that the one takeaway that we have from this is to keep an open mind, give people the benefit of the doubt, and great things are definitely possible there. If you're, one of the younger demographics, we'd love to hear as well your own viewpoint on this, and whether you agree with Dima or whether you think there's still more to be done to make sure that everybody is properly enabled in the workplace. It's part of a great conversation. But thank you very much, Dima, for opening our minds today and helping to show us a little bit about what is possible with those that we already have in the workplace and to help us to keep our priorities in the right place. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.